Games. Board games. We might be talking about multiple auctions, but we're not gonna shout. We are carrying on looking through the book, and we're carrying on having a look at Board Game Geek and comparing how it's used there and comparing and contrasting. And I'm going to probably now stop singing because my rhymes are terrible, but there we go. It's today's all about multiple lot auctions, and let's get on with the show. Hello, good morning, good
Hooray!
afternoon, watches wherever you are. 10 a.m. is UK time for Busy Beats and Board Game Blether. Pondering mechanics, multiple lot auctions, as always, featuring Alan Paull. I say as
Hello,
always,
everybody.
but yeah, every couple of weeks you come along, and we've been talking through a lot of these. We've been talking about a lot of types of auctions.
God, we
Last
have.
fortnight, we talked about fixed placements auctions, and basically everything we talked about and a lot of the advantages we talked about are inherent to multiple lot auctions.
Yes.
The
So
acceleration,
refer everybody back to all our previous ones about the last.
yeah,
I don't know how long it
go
was.
and
Yeah.
watch that.
Yeah.
But in all
Makes it
seriousness,
very short.
the acceleration, the games we talked about, all of them could fit in here. But I think it will be interesting to talk about how else multiple auctions can work, multiple
Yeah.
lot auctions.
Yes,
And
indeed.
do you have anything you want to say straight off the bat about yourself, or shall we crack on with the regular feature?
Let's just crack on. Yes. I think people know me by now,
Recent
hopefully.
highlights, living life and seeing the sights. Recent highlights, playing games and other delights. Recent highlights. I had quite a few games played yesterday. If I may go first.
Yes.
I know that you also own Mega City Oceania by
Yes.
and
I
I read through the rules of that, and I it was the second time I played it since I played it, I believe, with possibly you and Charlie and someone else.
That could be right. Yes.
But I think two-player for me doesn't quite work. It kind of seems a little bit sad in terms of the um, way you take time, if you know what I mean. And
Yes. Yes.
the
I
real
I
time,
I
yeah.
don't think Charlie and I have played it two-player because it didn't seem really like a two-player game.
And
It seemed better with more.
I played this with
Um,
my friend, and we, she said the same thing, well, without me prompting, that she'd love to play it again, maybe at the maximum player count, 4 player. But
yeah.
as it was, I had an early lead, and then according to the rules of the game, once the bag is empty, then you go on to final scoring, and you're allowed to recycle all your stuff. So
Yeah.
basically, if you've got an early lead, your strategy could just be to
To keep
take
getting
9 things
yeah.
out of the
Yes.
bag each turn,
Yeah.
which does also seem a little bit weird. But I love the fact that it's such a unique offering. What do you think of Mega City Oceania?
I really liked it. It's quite original. It's got that lovely 3D stuff in it, which is like kind of the whole point, really. Um, it's been a while since I played it, I confess, and it didn't get to the table as often as I thought it would. Um, so yeah, I definitely enjoyed it a lot, but it's one of those games I think where other people will find more exciting things to play, which is a shame because I think it needs more. Needs more love. I think that game.
I think the one
Um,
thing that we got wrong when I played at your place was that when someone's delivering, you
mm.
have to stop touching your pieces totally. You can't
Oh
be
right,
fiddling with them. You can't,
right.
even though it's you can't. You have to stop building. I think that doesn't mean you have to stop physically placing stuff. You can't be comparing the sizes of your things. I think that
Oh right.
the real time aspect of it is a big part of the game.
Yeah.
But
It's
other
for as a kind of dexterity type game. It's really fun.
Mm-mm.
It works really well. I have
And it's
no.
always interesting to have a mixture of dexterity with a wee bit of strategy, because there's
Yeah.
definitely a bit of push your luck, a bit of, okay, which of these actually looks achievable.
Yeah.
We
And
also
it's got
play
good production value as
absolutely.
well. I mean, it really looks lovely.
Oh, it's
Which
such a
is
shame that, I mean, given that Hub Games have folded, like, I wonder who would own the rights. I mean, I'm sure, even if there's not a legal, thing, I'm sure Rory's not going to be a jerk about it. Rory's a lovely person, so I'm sure that if there was another publisher interested, that Michael and Jordan could get a new publication.
Yes, I'd have thought so. Yeah.
But we also played Codenames Duet. Codenames isn't my
Right.
favorite thing, but I do like the duet thing, or I do like either version when it's played with the right crowd. And it's one of those games that, honestly, I would probably give a 5 out of 10 to. But if I play with I mean, any game is terrible when played with the wrong people, but it's not
That's true.
something that I would suggest. But when my friend brought it over, and it was, well, if you're passionate enough about this game to bring it over, then yes. And we ended up having a couple of games. I will admit that we lost both times on the easiest setting, the 9-9.
Oh, right, okay.
First time, I might have given a bad clue, and I lured my partner into saying shorts for beach, which is perfectly reasonable guess, and I missed that. I missed that shorts. It was anyway.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
then,
I've not played Codenames Duet. I've played Codenames, but not.
I love the
not Duet.
duet version. I think if you've got two players and you both enjoy word association and you're both at a similar sort of level, I think you would absolutely enjoy duet. I would
I'll
encourage
have
you
a
to
go.
try it.
I'll have a go,
Basically, the
certainly.
thing that duet brings into the game is that both of you are spy master, both of you are guessers, so you're both doing everything. You take turns, and yeah, there's not much more to say. It's exactly what you'd expect. Obviously, it's done well. There's now 3 assassins, so there's a bit more tension. And you're both trying to find all the clues within, level 1, which is meant to be the easiest, is you can either take 9 turns, or whether that ends up in saying, no, no more for me, or hitting a bystander. And it's really interesting, kind of thinking, okay, well, we could do some things that are just ones, but we've got to hit a few nice things. And once you've beaten the game, there's a kind of campaign mode where it says, okay, up for your next thing, choose a different level. And then it gets harder and harder. So the idea being that you explore the outskirts and until you're super amazing at the game. Sorry, I think you're muted, Alan. I just realised that you've been talking. I do apologise. And
Sorry. Yes,
yes.
accidentally. I've got my leads all tangled up here for some reason. Anyway, yes. Apologies. Yeah, that sounds really good. Well, I think we might have a copy. I'll have to check, but we've certainly not played it yet. So we must do that. I could play it with Charlie, couldn't I? That would be good.
There were a few other things. We played a new edition of Bag Chal, a very old game from about the year 1000. Not this particular copy, obviously, but this is a Nepalese game, vaguely similar to Fox and Geese. One person's trying to kill the other person's trying to trap. Well, it's tiger versus goats. Goats are trying to trap the tiger.
The
tiger
tiger's
is trying to jump
goats.
and it feels nice, but it's got a stalemate issue. The end game can drag on. I was honestly, as much as I want to love all the games from 1,000 years ago, I feel like gaming has kind of moved on.
It has progressed a little bit over the 1,000 years. Yes.
And we also played a couple of games by me, including Drawn Together. Do you think
yes.
it looks like a circle or triangle?
Oh, that's more circle.
Okay.
Yeah, more circle.
What about this?
Oh, that's definitely triangle. Yeah.
And this one?
That's more triangle as well.
And what that tells me is probably that the more experienced player was consistently winning. And
that would be right, yes.
And
So that's good. That's progressing well. Is that a new board?
It's a map that I didn't have when I showed it to
Right,
you,
right.
and I think that it. I do ideally want to balance them all really nicely, but it
Yeah.
feels like in order to do that, I can't just play it myself against someone else and then swap round.
No,
I
no,
need to
that's not
have
fair.
like tens or
Yeah,
at least
yeah, yeah.
tens of tests between many different players saying, okay, we'll play and then we'll swap sides and see how it
Well,
goes.
yeah. I mean,
And
I haven't won that game yet. I don't think I think I lost every single one I played.
well, you only played against me and Charlie, to be fair.
Yes, yes, that is true. And my spatial awareness is not as good as either of yours.
But I'm quite excited about that, and I think that this is a bit unusual, and I don't know how to advertise this, but I'm thinking I'm going to do a Kickstarter and say this is almost like an open beta where, yeah, where I'm just sharing you the files that I've got with the awareness that I think they're vaguely balanced, but I'm not sure. And honestly, in order to be sure, I'd need to get them play tested hundreds of times.
Yes.
So if you are willing to help me, I was trying to work out a way of could I do it in a way to say, yeah, here's a small charge in order for the sheets, and then if you buy the full thing when it goes like and you play test it a number of times as thanks, like I'll give you your money back or something. I don't know. But it's kind of like being inspiration from like Steam open beta where people on the
Yes.
video game community are understanding that even though it's not finished, there is still value in having gotten this
Oh yeah.
far. And I think with board games, because it's in a box, no one really does a beta release because once you publish it, well, that's it. You can't easily change it. But the with the prevalence of print on demand stuff coming out and especially sheets, maybe that is something that people might be willing to accept. I don't know. I
Well,
need to.
colouring sheets are a thing. I'm just saying. Colouring ins. My grandchildren always do. They want their colouring ins, Pokemons and things like that. But it's not
That's
quite the
true.
same as competitive colouring in.
I
But
mean, it
I
doesn't
think
feel
it's
like
such a
if
wonderful
what did
idea. It's a
just
perfect
for
idea.
coloring in, it doesn't feel as exciting a thing if you weren't playing the game.
No, I think you have to play the game to make it really work. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it feels like, this is all right. It's a thing. I guess I could color this in, but anyway. But
It's not a
you've been
solo
up to
game.
lots
It's
of
not a
stuff
solo game.
yourself
No.
as well. And
Yes.
what have you been up to?
Well, we went to the Letchworth, what's it called? FBG Con, a
Yes.
friendly board game con, because it's relatively local to us. I mean, it's only 3/4 of an hour drive, I think. And we played Carnegie for the first time with Jonathan and Lucy, who are friends of ours. They taught us Carnegie. And that took quite a while because that's quite a long game. And then we thought, as a bit of light relief, we'd teach them woodcraft. So basically, we played just those 2 games in the whole day. Well, to be fair, we didn't arrive till about 11:30. I think we started playing at about 12:30, something like that. But we only played those 2 games for the day. But it was good because I wanted to play Carnegie for quite a while. Yeah, I think it's a really good example of a game of its type. It's a kind of heavyweight Euro. Is it medium heavy? No, I think it counts as a heavyweight Euro, really.
I've not played it myself, but
You've not played it.
it's about negotiation and making deals and
Oh, well, not well. It's about. Well, I mean, the theme is managing a company. You're managing a kind of
okay.
corporation, and you are basically buying new departments for your company. Each department is like it's like a building in a traditional Euro game. Each department has its own special ability, and you're also and critically putting your workers out onto the board, which is basically the US, and they go out onto the board, and that enables you to grab locations in city. You can build buildings in cities, and you get points for linking up major cities of the US. You get points for making donations, because it's Carnegie, so it's philanthropic donations you make from your vast wealth that you will acquire. The nice little things about the game is that when you bring back, you can activate an area and bring back people from one of the 4 regions: east, Midwest, West, and South. When you bring a person back to your company headquarters in order to reuse him in one of the departments that you've got, you get bonuses for technology progress within the region he's coming back from, and also from technology progress you've made in your headquarters. So there's a whole research strand. It's got a lot of moving parts, but they're fitted together really, really well. So if you like the kind of, it's definitely a game for planners. So if you like planning multiple strands of activity across several ways of getting victory points, this is a good game for you, because it really there's a lot of strategy and a lot of little tactical bits as well to it.
Okay,
so yeah, it's I think thoroughly recommended. I mean, Paul Grogan likes it as well. Paul Grogan, I think, he must have done a playthrough of Carnegie.
Yeah, I've heard lots of good things about it. It's definitely on my radar.
Yeah.
But it's always the way, isn't it, with longer games, when you think, well, I could play these 2 games, or if I just played short games all day, I could play like 5, 10 different things.
Exactly. Yeah. So Sunday, having played Carnegie, which is a long game, and then Woodcraft, which is a long game, I then went to a board game extravaganza in Ely at Julia's Tea Rooms in Ely, which is next to the cathedral. It's a really, really good little venue.
So
and I played
just outside Cambridge, right?
Well, Ely, it's quite away from 3/4 of an hour from Cambridge, really. It's a little drive from Cambridge. Yeah. If you're an American, it's just outside Cambridge. Yes.
By London standards, it's just outside.
Fair enough. For us provincials, it's quite away. So I played thingy TI4. Which was quite nice. I've not played that before, so it was quite a revelation, and I had to watch various videos and read stuff before, so I could be at least vaguely competitive, because Twilight Imperium is a bit of a monster. I think probably most people have at least heard of it, and probably may have
it's
played
kind of Twilight Imperium and Eclipse are the big 2 sci-fi behemoths. And
I mean, Twilight Imperium is much bigger than Eclipse, I think. But Twilight Imperium has got a massive,
with Tony Boydell and a few other folk, and I came away from it feeling like, okay, was that it? I don't feel like I need to rush. But I'm definitely keen to try Twilight Imperium.
Twilight Imperium is epic. I mean, it's if you're playing with 5 or 6 players, we were playing 5 players. It can play, I think, 3 to 6. I don't know if it might even play 2. I'm not sure. I don't think you'd probably want to play 2. But we played with 5. It took us, well, including teaching. After we'd already, all of us there were 2 complete newbies, me and Sam, and so we had watched a video and read this is the document, Learn How to Play Twilight Imperium, which gives you the basics. After having done that, we then had about an hour or so of setup and teaching, and then after that it took about 8.5 hours to play. So it is a monster game, but I was surprised at how well it flowed and how engaged everybody was all the time. Yes, it's a massive science fiction, it's not actually a Conquer the Galaxy game, although you could try to conquer the galaxy, but that's not what you're trying to do. The beautiful parts of the design is that you play to either 10 victory points or 14 victory points. So the moment somebody wins 10 points, that's the end straight away. So there's a very coherent, easy to see target. Now, obviously, the means to get those 10 points are multiple and varied, but they basically boil down to a range of public objectives which are revealed during the game. So you start with a couple being revealed, and I think you get 2 more each round, and there are 2 different levels of those. So the first lot of public
And then
objectives,
it's a race to get to these things.
no, you can get all of them. You can get each public objective. Everybody can get them, which is which is also clever. So if you don't have to get them straight away, you can leave some of the early ones till later. The level 1 objectives gives you 1 point, and the level 2s give you 2 points. So it automatically brings in that crescendo because you're going to get more points for the later objectives. But in addition, there are secret objectives. You start with a couple of secret objectives, and you can get more during the game. But
interesting. So presumably the objectives that have actually turned up and what's in your hands is going to give each game a slightly different flavor. And you know, I'd love to discuss this more, but I feel like we should crack on a wee bit.
Yep.
And you know what? I'm going to quickly share brilliant thing. What's a little thing which is brilliant? I mean, multiple lot auctions. They're all about doing lots of things at once. And I think that multitasking, even though there's some, you know, like let's just be positive, because multitasking, going from one thing to another, it's more entertaining. Sometimes it's like, oh, I'm doing this, and you can feel a little bit tired or bored when you're doing just one thing. But if you've got multiple things going on, maybe you're drawing and you're listening to music and you're listening to a podcast at the same time. And then I find it much easier to draw like that when I've got multiple things going on.
Right.
And I think that you could argue that multiple lot auctions are kind of just a way of having extra stimulus, more things going on, which is the way that society seems to be going towards. Multiple stuff going on. I think it's cool.
Yeah. Yes, I agree. And it's very, very heavily used in board games, obviously. And it's almost that's the way things are going to more complicated.
Like having more and more stuff,
having more and more stuff to do. Yes. Hence the popularity of things like Carnegie and Twilight Imperium. You've got huge amounts of things to do in both those games. So yeah, multiple lot auctions are they're a staple now, aren't they, of board game design? That's good.
Yeah.
Shall I read out the description like I usually do?
Yes, as always, let me first remind anyone watching to please comment, ask questions from follow, and we will get into the main topic at this point. And yes, how did they define the mechanism? Please let us know.
Right. The book says an auction in which players simultaneously bid on multiple lots in parallel instead of bidding for one lot at a time serially. So how does that compare with?
And that's exactly the same as the first sentence here. And then the rest of the Board Game Geek description, it expands on this a tiny bit. The actual format of the auction can follow any of the auction mechanisms. For example, in Revolution, players perform a simultaneous sealed bid auction on 12 different actions. And there are only 25 things listed here, but I think there's a lot of multiple auction games that haven't been listed, have been overlooked. I mean, all the fixed placements things from last time. And it just occurred to me, I think For Sale is one. But maybe
very often turn order auctions are also things like Through the Ages. That's a multiple. That's a kind of multiple lot auction, isn't it? Or is it actually? Come think of it.
There's an interesting kind of parallel.
Actually, you're not simultaneously bidding. You're not
and Market Rules.
You're not actually simultaneously bidding in Through the Ages, are you? So it's not.
A market rule feels slightly different. I guess it can be considered definitely adjacent, but yeah, I don't know. Why do why do you think market rules are not multiple auctions, or do you think that market rules are multiple auctions?
I don't think they are. Having thought about it a bit more, because you are you are generally bidding on one thing at a time. You're not. It's not. You're not simultaneously bidding in most
Yes.
market lot auctions. So I think it's probably it's a bit different. The whole point of multiple lot auctions is that it's simultaneously bidding in things on parallel. So you can't get one thing and then reassess and get another thing. You're typically secretly allocating your bid in a multiple lot auction. So for example,
Shall we have a look at your nomination, because that
Sure.
feels like a key example of what's going on.
Yeah. Okay. What I was looking at was Shogun. This version. This is not the Wallenstein Shogun game. This is the game originally. It originally came out in 1986. It was one of Milton Bradley's Game Master games. Is it with an S in it? Game Master games. That's right.
By Michael Gray.
By Michael Gray, who worked for Milton Bradley for years, and then I think he went on to Avalon Hill. Has designed a lot of stuff, so he is a very
a lot of licensed stuff, and also known for the Dream Phone game, which kind of had a bit of a cult reawakening, which was interesting. But you were going to show some pieces from this.
Yes, because it's. Well, look at this. This is the box size. It's actually not quite as big as Twilight Imperium now, but it's when it first came out. This is 1986. Remember, we didn't actually really have anything quite like the Game Master series. It was a real revelation in box games, because it was like 3-4 times as big as any other box game, and it has some of the earliest examples of 3D trays for containing stuff. Now this is actually polystyrene, so this is molded polystyrene.
And is that where you're bidding?
This is your planning tray. So as you see, you've got a little shield where you've got all the information you need about planning and what the action sequence is, and you're bidding at the back. You're putting your bids. You're actually there are 2 things you're bidding on, and potentially 3 other things that you're spending your money, your koku, which is actually, the money is called koku, and it's nice red pieces like this. So when you bid, you actually just put the koku into the little trays, and that's how much your bid is, and you reveal when you've all done it. Now each round of the game, you start, and at the start of the game, you allocate all the money you want to spend to several of those little bins. They call them bins at the back there, and those are things that you can do, and they're just going round. First thing you can do is you can do something which they call take swords. That's a turn order, and this is again showing the production value of this thing. It's really great. So you get little plastic swords.
Oh wow!
Samurai swords. Yeah, you see, and each one, you can't see it, unfortunately. I should have painted them. Each one has got a number of little diamonds on it, 1 to 5. So which sword you get denotes which player order, where you are in the player order. Yeah, and even better.
So that's presumably you pay all the money that you've spent, and the most money is player number 1.
When you've got your sword, you put it in a little sword holder. You see, look at that. Isn't that dinky? Love a little bit. Anyway, sorry. So the first thing you can.
So just to confirm with the auction, it's just the turn order is in order of how much you bid, and you spend all your money.
It is exactly. You don't have to bid for. You don't have to bid for turn order at all. You don't have to put any money in at all. If you don't put any money in, then you just get randomly one of the swords that are left. So it's up to you how much you put in. Second thing you can do is you can spend money on building castles and fortresses. That's kind of you're not bidding for that. You either do or you don't. It costs you 2 or nothing. Then you can levy units. Again, these are stuff you can put on the board or into your armies. You can also, the fourth thing is you can hire Ronin, which are basically troops you hire just for one round. And finally, the other bid one. So this is a different bid. This is the hire ninja. This is the thing that people like a lot, actually. I don't actually know where the ninja is. He's a little black piece, black
You
plastic
can see
piece,
it's on this.
and I don't know
photo, I
where he
guess.
is. He seems to have escaped somewhere. It's a very, very big box, so I'm not going to bother to find
It's
him.
fine, but you can see it's
Yeah.
on the photo here, I think.
Oh yes, there he is. Good. I'm glad I've got a picture of the ninja. Right now, I won't go into detail of how you play. Although you just got to see this. You will have to see. This is your starting armies. So there we are. That's your starting armies. So these are, you've got provincial forces which are on the map, and you've got these 3 starting armies. The flag denotes a daimyo. Daimyos are very important. They are leading your army. So they are the things that will actually attack.
So just to
opposing
confirm,
provinces.
only one person is getting the Ronin
Only one?
because
Only
and-
one person is getting the ninja.
only one
And
person's getting.
Yeah, you can put as much money or as little money as you like into hire ninja. Only one person is going to get the ninja, but everybody pays. So however much you put in there, you will lose it whether or not you actually get the ninja. In
Sorry,
addition,
what's the third one again?
levy units.
And
The third one's levy units.
and only one person gets to do that.
No. The only bid options are take swords and hire ninja. The other build, levy units, and hire Ronin. Everybody just does those.
Okay, even though it's like
it's a
mentioned specifically in the game, like for a multiple lot auction, there's only 2 auctions really happening.
Yes, there are 2 auctions. Well, you say only. They're quite, because of the nature of the game and how the game turn pans out. Those options are actually turn order is really critical.
Sure, I understand
and
that
also
they
the
might
ninja
be
is really
critical, and
yes,
I understand
but it is only
that,
2. It is 2. Yes,
but this is kind of the fewest number of auctions you can have at one
in
time.
a multiple lot by
and
definition.
Technically,
yes.
call it multiple.
Yes.
I mean, it says the number of multiple you can get.
The important thing about this multiple lot is that the two auctions are actually different. The take swords is basically you pay money, and however much money you've paid, compare that with the amount of money other people have paid, and that will give you a particular place in the turn order. And there is a tie resolution. You if you've both bid the same amount for the take swords, you draw one of the swords. You put the 2 relevant swords and you pull it out randomly. So that's a fairly conventional. You pay, you get.
So yeah, that's a simultaneous bid.
But the more you pay, the more likely you are.
Multiple auction brings to the front is that you can't bid for both of it. It's going to change the decision space a little bit because you've got to consider them a tiny bit in parallel.
The higher ninja one, which is whatever you pay, you lose. That's absolutely critical, and you're always short of money. Like in most of these games, you're always short of money. So even so much as if there's a tie for winning the ninja, nobody gets the ninja, but you still both lose the money.
So you might be jumping ahead a wee bit with Shogun, but let's imagine that you put in you did the bid for turn order, and then you did the bid for the ninja, and then you paid for everything else. How badly would that destroy the game?
That would affect. If it was sequential. Oh no, that would change the whole nature of the game, because you have to make a judgment. You have to make all your judgments at the same time when you're doing a multiple lot. That's the whole point. So you have to assess the value of things without knowing what's happened before and what people have committed before. So it would actually be a lot easier to be if you spent your money on the swords first, you know how much money you've got left for all the other things. If you did it sequentially and had higher ninja at the end, that would change the nature of it entirely, because people will have spent more money on all the other things, and they'll have more knowledge about how valuable the ninja might be, but less ability to pay for it. So it's much more interesting to have to decide right at the start, without knowing what other people are doing, what to allocate. That's key. Now,
Would you say that parts of the appeal of the multiple lots auction then is this sudden reveal and the moments of greater excitement? Because rather than it being, okay, we do this, then we do this, then we do this, it's like, whoa, we do this, we do all these things together, and grand reveal.
Yes, I think that is true. It's much more dramatic, but also it does mean that the decision making is much better. And there's I think there's actually less AP with it not being sequential, less analysis paralysis, because you're having to make a decision when you are slightly in the dark, and that I think that is a good thing for game flow.
And in a sense, presumably, with lots of these games, you kind of need to map out your whole turn. So if it was sequential, you kind of would have to plan ahead, and then you might get into the situation of, oh, now I've not left myself enough money to actually build the things I wanted, like those 2 money. And you kind of need to make those decisions at the start. Am I on the right track?
Exactly. You are planning your whole turn really at the start. I mean, it is called the planning phase. I mean, that's what that's what you're actually doing, planning. The important point about the reason I'll come back to the ninja, because obviously with a multiple lot auction, the vital things are, what does it mean to win the auction? And with the ninja, I know it sounds it's a nice idea. It's obviously it's an assassination type of thing, but you've got 2 things you can do with the ninja. You can either try to assassinate an opponent's daimyo, which is one of these little flaggy the leaders of the armies. You've got 3 armies, and the ninja gives you the ability to try to assassinate one of your opponent's daimyo, which is a powerful thing to do. Or to spy, or as an alternative, you can spy on your opponent, and that means that at the start of the next round, everybody does their planning, and then if you've got the ninja, you can look at one of your opponent's planning board.
Ah, yes.
And then you can do your own planning
cards here.
Those, actually, I don't. I think that's a samurai swords one. I don't recognize those. The planning board. No, you're actually looking at the planning. You're looking at the planning board. You're looking at your opponent's this, and seeing where they've put all their koku. So
so could you show what?
Yeah, I'll do that again. I'm just going to put those into there a bit there. So you can look at this. So I now know what my opponent has allocated in with those red koku things, and then I can do my own plan. So you're spying, and you can see exactly what your opponent has planned for that round.
Interesting. So that gives you the advantage for the following round.
Yes. For this current round, it gives you an advantage for this current round. So before I allocate my stuff, I can look at one of my opponent's planned allocations.
But I mean, you need to have gotten the ninja in the previous round.
Yes, you need to have.
So it's for the round following the one.
For the round following one where you got the ninja. Correct.
That's what I meant.
Now,
and
the other.
But you're only allowed to look at one person. But
one person.
It's nice how you are. All of these options, they do integrate, and it's like, okay, you've got this, and this leads into the battle. But then when you've got an auction with enough going on, it does feel like there's the potential for having more. Okay, here's a spicy card. Here's a spicy ability that then delves right into the multiple lots auction itself. This kind of cool, interesting mechanism with. It's a little bit more knobby, I guess. Like there's more knobs to twiddle with it.
Yes, I think the important and the one of the most interesting things about the Shogun implementation of the multiple lot auction is that you're bidding for 2 completely different things. So you're bidding for turn order and the use of a powerful piece, which is a fascinating one, and it's different from some of the other ones we're going to come to now.
I think that I would like to very briefly talk about some of the fixed placement auctions that we talked about last time.
Yeah.
So Keyflower with all these tiles. You can see them unpunched here. Thank you to the user for. And you are, even though you're putting your pieces one at a time, so this feels kind of more similar to Market Row, because each turn you're deciding which one to bid on, if you know what I mean. But is this still clearly a multiple lots auction?
I am not certain about that, because the definition is players simultaneously build on multiple lots in parallel, instead of building for one lot at a time serially. And I'm not. There are multiple lots. There are multiple lots in
because
Keyflower.
I could bid on one thing, and then you could bid on thing B, and then I could bid on thing C, and then you could come back to lot number A. So
yes,
and then that aspect of it makes it feel like it is at the same time. If you were choosing out of these various objects, which one is the next one going to be bid on, and then resolved it before progressing, I think I would agree that it's like a, marketplace. It's market rule.
Yes,
but
you're bidding serially. You're not bidding for each lot serially. You're simultaneous. It's not secret simultaneous bidding like. Shogun is secret simultaneous bidding.
I mean,
and
for
that's
sure,
you only
Shogun
get one
does
bid.
it in a more explosive way.
Yes.
Do all this and then reveal.
Yes.
But here it's open and then
it's progressive.
Because things are resolving at different times. The first thing to start the bidding might also be the last thing that gets a bid upon it.
That's
and
correct.
Everything else might happen in the middle.
Yes.
So
I suppose in a way, what the multiple lot means is you are not concluding the acquisition of one lot and then concluding the acquisition of another lot. So in that sense, it's not serial. It's kind of Keyflower would still count as simultaneously bidding, although you are in actuality bidding serially, but you are not completing your bid.
Because it's an intermingled web, which is really interesting. And then homesteaders, which I talked about a wee bit last time, where you're bidding on these potentially 3 different options or passing, and you have to pass sometimes, but you're bidding on these 3 different building opportunities. And so not only is it multiple lot in that you've got these 3 cards in the middle. Here you can see a C for commercial, N for you can build anything you want, and I for industrial. And then once you've done that, then you look at all the buildings that you actually now got the right to build. But those 3 cards being in the middle with people moving their token and jumping in between them, even though here you're only going to get one of them at most, this is still a multiple lot auction, right?
It's still a multiple auction, yeah.
And everything we talked about 2 weeks ago is a multiple auction.
Yeah, because this is similar to the Keyflower one in the sense that it's the concluding of the auction, which is
okay. Well, there's 2 other games that I would like to very quickly bring up.
Yes.
One is El Grande, which in the book it's by Jeff Engelstein and Isaac Shalev. My copy's a little bit further away. Building blocks of tabletop game design. But they mentioned that area majority is kind of like multiple auctions going on at once, where your people are your bids and the points that you're getting are what you're bidding for. But that's not the thing that I want to focus on here. The thing that I want to focus on isn't what's going on in the middle, but rather these cards, which this is not the English version, but these are kind of powerful cards. They have different effects. They might allow you to move the key piece that determines where new caballeros are able to be placed. They might determine allow you to be able to put a new points marker on something to completely change the number of points that you'll be getting off something. They might allow you to dismiss people and bring them back. And these are super exciting actions. And what you've got to do is make essentially one bid where if you're more likely to choose the card in the center to activate that, then you've got to bid essentially fewer caballeros, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
And it's about that balance of how many people do I really want to put onto the board to potentially score points versus how much do I want to pick the card. And it's a once around auction. So it's not a simultaneous pass. It doesn't have that exciting moment. So it gets around ties that way. But do you agree that this is a multiple lot auction?
It's certainly very close, even if it isn't exactly it. But the point here is that the lots are effectively where you put your caballeros on the board, aren't they? So
I mean, I'm
disagreeing
disagreeing with that. I'm saying that for me, I'm equating it with the lots are the cards that you're able to activate. And it is kind of mixed in with, yes, if you bid higher for the card, then you will have fewer people to put into the middle, but that's an additional wrinkle. Let's not overlook the fact that this is a once-around auction.
It is, yeah.
Where the highest number that's bid gets to choose which card they want, and I get to control, because, I get to move the one on the right. I get to move the big pawny piece to wherever I want. And if I think that my decision matters a lot, then I'm going to bid more for it. If I think that I'm happy for anyone else to do it, then obviously I bid lower.
Well, it is slightly at a tangent, I think, because you would only get one lot. You can only win one lot in this case. I suppose there kind of are multiple lots, and you do secretly simultaneously bid.
Like once around, it is turn order.
It's turn order. It's been a while since I played Grande. So the thing is, you only get one lot. That's why I was thinking that the provinces are quite important, because you could consider, and this is what the book says. I believe the book actually does say
it does compare area majority to, but
it does. You were disagreeing with that. Yeah.
No, I agree with that. And furthermore, I think that the card part is definitely a multiple lot auction, is what I'm saying.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yes. It has got multiple lots in the sense that each card is.
Yes, you only get one,
but you only get
but
one.
That's no different to homesteaders. And sure, there's not the you outbid me here, I'm going to go to the other place. But what there is everyone bids, and then only once everyone has bid do we now announce, in going from whoever bid the highest, what you actually wanted. So it's possible that I bid the second highest, and I only really cared about one of them, and I really wanted that one. But because someone outbid me, well, that's a bit sad. It's also possible that I kind of cared about 3 of them, so maybe I just didn't want to be last in a 4-player game. I don't know. And it's evaluating these multiple things in tandem, which I think is what multiple lot auctions bring to the game.
The way Al Grande works is that you, first of all, you choose your card you're going to play. You choose your power card. So you choose which card you're going to use, not the special action cards. You choose which power card you're going to use from your set of cards, and that is done. Sorry, that is done in turn order, and you can't choose the same card that somebody else has chosen, which is critical, because somebody picks, because you don't refresh your cards. What do you do? I think you refresh them halfway through. Do you refresh them at all? I can't remember. It's been a while. So if I know you've played your highest card, I can play my highest card, and I know that I can beat you. So there is some tactics involved in that. But you play the power cards first, and then the person with the highest power card gets the first choice.
And
of
what
the
about this
special
makes it
action
feel like
cards.
not a multiple lots auction to you?
I think it does. It does. It feels it is. I think it is a multiple lot auction, but you only ever get one. You only get one lot. So it's very. So, for example, it's different from Shogun. In Shogun, you could win the. You could be first player in turn order, and you could also win the ninja. So I mean, you could win more than one lot. And in a lot of multiple lot auctions, the whole point of it is you might win 2 or 3 lots, or you might win no lots. Whereas in El Grande, which is much more structured, and for good reason, it works really, really well. It's much more structured. Each player will get one card.
Exactly, yes.
And that's
a fair
key.
point.
It's which cards
And
you get
so
that you're looking for.
I'm feeling like it is a multiple lots auction, but maybe it's the subsets of multiple lots auctions where you get exactly one does feel a little bit more constrained and does feel a little different, and compared to something which can go a little bit more off the rails, where, I mean, El Grande is very constrained, let's be honest, because the value with which you bid is pre-printed on these cards, and every bid is balanced. It's not as if bidding 9 is better or worse than 2, because yes, 9 gives you more bidding power for the card,
but 2
then
gives
it
you more
allows you to put
caballeros.
fewer things on the board.
Exactly.
And so it's all about the timing, and you know that you're basically going to have to use basically all your cards throughout the game, and so it's a case of when do you do this? And there are special cards. I think it's the special cards that allow you to bring something back. So in theory, you want to have something good enough to bring it back, and
I mean,
but it's a little bit. Whereas something like Keyflower, where you could win in theory. I mean, if you win literally nothing, then you're doing incredibly badly. But I mean, there's so many hexes in that game.
Yes, you're likely to win some. Interestingly, El Grande doesn't have multi-lot auction as one of its listed mechanisms. So it's not in there as a listed mechanism, although it is mentioned. It is mentioned in the book.
Let's
so
not
I think that
go by what Board Game Geek users have.
I know it's because it's not the same. The book. I mean, the book. Just saying this. I think what Geoffrey and Isaac say is, though area majority games often model military conflicts, as in El Grande, they are mathematically similar to multiple auctions. The troops or influence cubes, etc., can be abstracted to bidding tokens, and the player with the highest bid wins the lot. And area majority games typically offer rewards to more than only the highest bidder. So they are saying that they would consider the provinces to be the lots. Because if the province is more than one person, up to 3 players can get a benefit from when you score the provinces.
I agree, mathematically that can be, and all I'm saying is that the cards are also, but I don't want, I would like to move on, if we may. To For Sale, which here you see a relatively old edition, where, or actually, this might be someone's homebrew version, I think. Look, it's a very simple game. You've got numbers on cards. It's very easy to make your own edition. You've got a bunch of buildings going, I think, 1 to 30, and you've got a bunch of money cards. And there's also some tokens. Now, let's look at a Board Game Arena game in progress. So phase 1 of the game, you've got these actual tokens. So looking back in the past, Michael has just passed and paid the first person to pass. If you pass, you take half your money back. If you're the last person in, every turn putting more money in, going round in turn order, increasing the bid, the last person in spends all that money in. So as you might expect, being second is often ideal. And here there was 4 buildings up there, property 3, 16, 19, and 21. In this situation, well, once someone bids, passes and pays 0 for property 3, I would assume that other people are going to be like, 16, 19, 21, there's not that much difference. So one person already bid 2. Michael says, no, I'm not going to bid more than 2. I decide I'm going to bid 3, which seems like a bad idea. Why did I do that? Sate passes, and Black Sheep and bids more, which was probably a bad idea because then they need to pay 4, whereas I only pay 2 for property 19. Now, that's phase 1. That's how every turn in phase 1 goes. And then we've gone through an entire deck of cards like that. Now, here's the second deck of cards where you're turning these property cards that you've gathered during the game. As you can see, I've gathered properties 2, 13, 14, 19, 20, 23, and 26, and I'm trying to get the highest numbers. So now it's a blind bid, simultaneous reveal. I've got to think, well, I certainly don't want to be lost and get the 2. I just want to make sure that I'm not lost. So everyone puts down a card and we reveal, and Yep. And that's the way it goes. So if I just click, you can see every turn everyone's putting down cards, and for some reason the replay doesn't show what I put down. But now, even though everyone's just getting 1 card, would you agree that this is multiple lot auctions?
Ooh.
Because if potentially getting more than 1 thing is a prerequisite for multiple lot auctions, then that goes beyond what has been stated as the definition.
That's a tricky one. I think the thing is here, classification is always going to be a bit hit and miss, isn't it? And there are some things which are going to be grey areas, and I think we're in a situation where this one and El Grande probably are a bit grey when it's in assessing them as multiple lot auctions. I mean, when you're buying something in for sale, I mean, there are multiple lots, aren't there? In the sense that there's more than one building that you
see a number of lots equal to the number of players, and it's ideal for big crowds. I mean, this is a fantastic game, if I may say so.
And if you look at the definition, you're bidding on a lot, but you can raise the bids, can't you? Which is normal bidding. But are you dealing with one building at a time?
No, because
no, you're not.
There's player count number in the middle. So I think so it's 3 to 6 players. If there's 3 of you, there's 3 in the middle. If there's 6 of you, there's 6 in the middle.
So it is a true. You're simultaneously bidding on multiple lots, aren't you? You're not deciding on one lot at a time. So
it's
counts
about
as a multiple lot auction.
But the interesting thing is that all the lots are kind of along one axis of utility. It's not like Shogun, where there's these 2 totally different things. And I think that's maybe the reason why you're feeling it isn't a multiple lot auction.
No, I think it is a multiple lot auction. It's just got a different flavour.
Maybe that's the source of the different flavour, let's say. Because whereas Shogun, you've got the ninja, which has a completely different utility, as I understand it, to being earlier in the player order. And here, if you are bidding against, we have to simultaneously bid against houses are good, and this other thing is also good. How much do I want to put into this versus that one? Whereas it's more about
your example there was really good. This in this type of multiple lot auction, if you got your example there, which had houses which were roughly the same value, that means that you can get something quite good if you tactically maneuver the bidding in your favor for quite a cheap price. Whereas somebody who doesn't do that will end up paying a lot more, could conceivably end up paying a lot more for something which is roughly the same as what you got. And that's nice. On the other hand, of course, if you've got very different house prices, house values, then it concentrates the minds a lot, doesn't it? Because you want to be in the position.
Absolutely, and I think the really interesting things are when it's like if in a 5-player game the bottom 3 are all rubbish, and then the top 2 are, let's say, 29 and 30. That's a very interesting auction, because now you're thinking, well, I want to be in the top 2, but then at the same time, everyone's going to think the same. So should I actually just duck out and take the blow and assume that someone else is getting the 2 great things, but then maybe they will end up overpaying for it, and I'm just going to duck out. But then if too many people duck out, then they will end up getting it for that not much. And that's what makes it, because it's increasing bid, and which feels to me like possibly the most interactive of the auctions, except for English auction. I think that just, turn order until pass is very nice and interactive.
Yes, I think we can generalize this a little bit. I think there's probably, I'm going to suggest, 3 fundamental different types of multi-lot auctions, if you want to subcategorize. One is you've got you're bidding for very different types of thing, so you're having to value different types of thing, like in Shogun with the turn order or the ninja. Very different. It's almost like different, completely different types of things. But you're paying with the same currency. So you're having to put a value on turn order and the ninja with the same currency.
That makes sense.
The second type, where you're paying for different values of the same thing. So you're having to assess how much you want. The houses is a good example.
Like for sale,
for sale. And then the final type we haven't touched, which is like furnace. You're then looking with furnace. Not only are you looking at the value of the lots, but you're also looking at the value of any compensation you might get for not winning. Because there are some games which have multiple lots where they have you can gain something,
or indeed homesteaders, which we mentioned briefly.
Yes. And I think that is also a very interesting one, because I know I've played Furnace a couple of times, and there you can be in the situation sometimes where you don't mind not winning at all, because you're really aiming at the compensation. The compensation might fit with your plan better than winning the actual lot. And that's a very interesting, it's almost like the compensation is kind of, it's almost like the compensation is part of the lot, rather than being a little sop that you get because you committed some resources and didn't actually win it. It could be what you're actually aiming at. So you're replacing the actual lot with the compensation.
It does feel like the compensation has to be along a different axis to what lots are in terms of value, because otherwise it becomes too much like this is parts of the lots and too simple a decision. Whereas so I'm not super familiar with Furnace, but in Homesteaders, whereas the lots are the building contracts which give you the ability to build, but then the passing is an increasing set good. So you just get this thing, and here's a free item.
Yeah,
and
typically
they are so different, then that makes it a really interesting decision space.
Yeah. Typically, compensation might be along the lines of, here's some more money that you can use for your next bid, and which is a good one because it will tend to balance up the bidding. But certainly on a different axis, I think most of the compensations in Furnace are resources, whereas the lots in Furnace are a particular process that you can do. So it'll be typically a conversion of one thing into another thing. So it might be converting. I can't remember what it's about really, but converting
coal into
oil into points, for example, which is kind of what you want to do. But you might have compensation of get some oil, which is quite good compensation.
With these 3 things, because I think this is worth exploring a tiny bit more, you've got the similar stuff, very different things, but then that feels like one axis, and then the possibility of compensation feels like that could occur whether it's very different things or similar things. So that feels like a completely unrelated axis. And then there's a third axis, which you haven't mentioned, which is how many things can you win? Because it could be free form of in the most constrained way, everyone's getting exactly one. In the least constrained way, there's a possibility, however remote, that one person gets everything or one person gets absolutely nothing.
Yes.
Which I could imagine in Keyflower, if you really feel like, you know what, I'm really just about activating all these buildings, and that's what I'm going to spend my workers on this turn.
Exactly.
I'm not going to even bother going for that, and then the other players can fight it out there. And
I'm not sure it's a great strategy, but it could be one you could use for a turn. Yeah, definitely, you could use it.
And hello, Yoda. Lovely to see you. And I hope you're generally well. And so we've just finished talking about the examples. So let's get into our rounding up questions as we typically do. So multiple lot auctions. How does it impact the game? How will it affect the experience at the table?
Well, I think the most important thing is that it gives you a really good decision point, because you have to decide on your assessment of the value of each lot when you make the bid, particularly if you're doing if you are having to do something like a planning bid, like in Shogun, you have to make that decision about how you value things. So, for example, in Shogun, some people decide, well, I'm not even bothering with a ninja. I might not bother with ninja in the whole game, because let other people waste their money on the ninja, because you are spending it each time. So it's the impact on the game is really giving you those juicy decision points for planning how you're going to do things, and it's much more of a planning thing. I use the word planning rather than you're just bidding. You're actually planning because you're having to assess your value, the value you put on each of those lots at the time you're doing the bids.
It's interesting that in all of these examples, except for the second phase of for sale, all of the items that you are bidding on are things that you're going to use in the future.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it makes sense that it is planning and looking ahead into the future, and it makes sense that, yes, because of having multiple things going on, you've got to now consider more. It does speed it up a little bit. What you said about being crunchier decisions, but ironically less AP, I think does generally hold true.
But it does make it is a way of doing it that's we were saying about effective experience at the table. It does make it a little bit more complex, perhaps, or at least well, in a way it's mechanically simpler, but more complex in how you make the decision, because you're having to assess lots of things at the same time, if that makes sense. So it's crunchier decisions, but possibly less of them, because rather than having to do things
so
in
maybe
isolation,
we could say that this leads towards a denser game.
Yeah, that's nice. I like that. Yes, a denser game. Yes,
great. So how versatile is it? Do you think that anyone who's, if you're aiming your game at a certain, if you're okay with a certain level of complexity, which we've said is required for multiple auctions, should you always consider it, or what are some situations where,
Well, I mean, it's a good way of divvying up resources in a relatively quick way, particularly if you've got different types of things or different values of the same types of thing, and you want to divvy it up fairly swiftly, without having to do it in an overtaxing way. I think that, but having said that, I mean, I think if you look at our examples, it could be done in a very simple way, because I think For Sale is relatively straightforward, isn't it? As a game, it's not a complex game, so it doesn't have to be a complicated implementation. It can be like the implementation in Shogun is a little bit more complex, because you are requiring players to do all their planning, including they're doing with Shogun. You're planning not just the bidding you're doing, but also what you're going to spend on other things which don't require any bidding. So there is a level of complexity in Shogun.
I must admit,
a lot more than For Sale.
for sale feels to me, I'm delving dangerously into review opinion territory, but let's be honest, we always mix stuff. For sale feels to me like one of those gloriously simple games like No Thanks, where I feel like this can't be done any other way. There's no sense in trying to improve it. It is absolutely perfect. And I mean, congratulations, Stefan Dora, but I wonder, is there scope for more simple multiple lot auctions, or is that basically pretty much the only one? If we look at everything on Board Game Geek, if we include all the fixed placements auctions, there were only 19 of them. And this time, for all the multiple lot auctions, there's still only 25. And even if we assume that maybe there's a few things that maybe should be there but aren't there, it's very underrepresented. And do you think we should be using it more?
I don't know, to be honest. I think that auctions are used a lot anyway. I mean, we do have a lot of auction games. I'm not sure. I'm not sure that it's necessarily underused. Actually, how popular are multiple auction games? I mean, Keyflower's very popular, but then Keyflower's got its own very particular way of handling that multiple lot auction. I think it really depends on how well I think you can integrate the multiple auction into your game. I mean, I think in a little way, Shogun is a bit surprising, because the heart of the Shogun game is the military stuff. It's the action sequence where you are having to you build your fortresses, you get more units, you push your armies through. So it's it's got dice rolling for conquering provinces. So it's a conventional. Well, I mean, it has got a part of the action sequence called Wage War. It's a war game. It's a war game thing. Those auctions are kind of. I mean, they do work. They work really well. But they're not, if you like, they're not normal in that kind of war game, if you like, if I could say, risk type game, where the main purpose of the game is to conquer provinces and win battles. So the whole ninja and auction for turn order are quite a radical departure from the normal way of approaching that kind of war game. They work really well, and I think they make it much more interesting because of the way they're integrated in there. It would be easy to really cock that up and actually make something with multiple lots which didn't integrate well with the game. And as you said, it's only two lots you got to auction for. So it's the least you can get of a multiple lot auction. But it just goes really, I think it works really, really well with that theme of the game. It's got a thematic bit. Hiring ninja is a very highly thematic Japanese
but
thing.
I mean, you're also hiring running, but and it makes sense that they take all your money. And Timmy compares it to the video game Shogun Total War, and I think thematically, yes, it is battling and everything, but I think in terms of the decision space, it's feels like it's probably quite substantially different. But I think that carrying on with our questions, when is it good? I think, at the risk of just repeating ourselves, when you want to give people more to consider in one go.
Yes. Particularly if it's in a planning game. Even For Sale is a planning game, isn't it? Because when you buy things in the first half of that game, you are looking at how is that going to impact the second half when you sell them.
Because you could try to get a middling range, but then that's likely to give you like middling stuff in the second half. Whereas if you it's
I think
highly player dependent. I think is also the interesting thing, because auctions are inherently player dependent. And are multiple lots auctions even more so? Or are they equally interactive and player dependent, would you say?
I think they're equally interactive and player dependent. I mean, again, just looking at Shogun, people you do take into account what somebody else's opinion is of a ninja. If you see, oh, that person really loves going for the ninja,
I mean, I
they'll
can
pay loads for the ninja.
Shogun, you've just not been able to stop talking about it.
I know, but you can see. I played a lot of Shogun back in the day.
But it sounds are you wanting to play Shogun again?
I would happily play Shogun again. Having played Twilight Imperium, Shogun appeals quite a lot because it's a bit shorter, but it's got some of the same flavor because the combat system is quite similar. It's very different in terms of how you win, but it's got some of that same epic game flavor to it. I think I would say that it's good when it's well integrated with the rest of the game system you've got. And who would enjoy it? I would say people who like games which are planning games. They're not immediate. They're more planning games. You have to be able to have that strategic approach. So I think that's quite key in multiple lot auctions because you can only really they're only meaningful if the value of the lots will vary as the game progresses. So your assessment will change as the game progresses. And that is a kind of aspect of planning your overall strategy. It's not just tactical; it's also strategic.
So and I think that the key thing is that, whilst yes, Warhammer is a game with miniatures and Zendar, it's about the combat and movement. So there's a vague similarity, but I think not only is the movement, in a miniatures game because there is no discrete units. It's about you could move 100th of a millimeter theoretically and then argue about whether something's in range or not. Whereas in a board game, because you've got designated spaces, it feels quite different. But obviously today, the thing that we're talking about is the multiple lot auctions, which I think is interesting when in Warhammer, there's nothing analogous to that. But in Shogun, having the actions be multiple lots auctions, it kind of reminds me of Homesteaders in a way, where Homesteaders, it's not about you get this thing, it's about you get the right to build, which is kind of like in Shogun. It's kind of like, worker placements games. I think if we look at them, a lot of them could probably be with a lot of massaging be turned into multiple lots auction games.
Probably where your workers are your bids.
Yes, and you have multiple units.
You have you're bidding for particular actions which are a bit like lots. That is actually.
No, I'm not saying. I mean, like as in when I said with a bit of massaging, I didn't mean massaging the definition. I actually meant massaging the game. Like
right. I see. Yes. Okay.
And they could even be turned into a Shogun style. Simultaneous reveal. Okay, let's see who gets to read this turn in Agricola. Well, I'm paying more for to read, so therefore I get it. Whereas you're only getting the clay, but hey, the clay's no good to you without being able to do your house.
You could change these things. You could mess around with. Well, yes. I mean, let's face it. There are design choices that you make, and sometimes they can be quite critical. I haven't used. I don't think I've used multiple lot auctions in any game. Oh, wait a minute. Did we use with Fizzed? Well, it's one of Tony's games was Fizzed, which was an auction game. That is it's not multiple lot. They're not simultaneously bidding on multiple lots in parallel. You're buying a robot in Fizzed, but you're buying from the end of the line.
Okay, so it's more about it's single lot, but then you get a bit of information about what's coming up, which is going to be a very different experience.
Yes.
I mean, I've not used it, but I am very tempted to explore it. And I really love it, auctions. And for the record, I just want to say, I already said it on a previous show that Doric got in touch with me on WhatsApp on Sunday to say, "Hey, Bez, why haven't you worked on your English auction, your game about an auction to become the auctioneer anymore?" And I thought that game was awesome. And then afterwards, Doric said, "Yeah, I understand you're working on other games, but that game seemed very close to being done after only 1 day of testing." And so then I spent, after that lovely message, half an hour working out the maths, and I might test it again on Friday and see how it goes. Because, yeah, I'm going to actually announce it. It's going to be one of my games for UK Games Expo, a game about auctioning cubes after winning an auction to become the auctioneer.
Right. Yes. Good. I mean, sometimes games do just like, you just have an idea like that and you just do it and you suddenly find, oh, it all worked. I played a game. I played a game in the Ely group last Wednesday. And they had a game which they've been working on for literally about a day, and it just worked perfectly. When we play tested it, it's just like, yeah, that's great. I wouldn't change anything, and you think, well, everybody agreed that was a game where for some reason or other it just all fell out completely perfectly in the first playtest. I mean, that doesn't happen very often, obviously, but and I'm sure eventually there probably will be some small refinements, but it's great when it happens.
But I mean, I don't have a strong idea of, okay, that's how it's going to look. But I think this is going to be one of those things in the back of my mind that I think, yeah, that's a really interesting technique, and that's something that I would like to explore, because I would like to do a lot of auction games. I mean, yeah, I'm not considering going and making 40, 50 different auction games like Knizia, but yeah, I'm certainly not that prolific. But yeah, it's a really fascinating thing. And if someone's thinking about making a multiple lots auction game, I mean, coming from our own place of ignorance, but let's be honest, most people are, what warnings would you give to them?
Well, my own view of this is that you have to, in most game design, context is everything. You have to make sure it's integrated in the game properly. There's no point in just tacking on an auction, any type of auction. It has to mean something. So that's, I may go back to Shogun again, but that's why I like the Shogun, because the implementation there, it's very light touch. It works really well in the theme, and it works very well in terms of how, for example, how turn order works in the rest of the game. It's all lovely and integrated, and it's just a light touch auction, which is, I think, quite rare. Because normally an auction game has auction as the main thrust of the game. But in that case, you've got an auction, but it's not the main part of the game. It's just really well integrated with it.
I think it's really interesting that you talk about how it can be a light touch, and I just want to unpack that slightly. So 2 things that I get from that are, firstly, to remind myself and hopefully anyone else out there that if you feel like, I want to make a game where this thing matters, it doesn't have to be the biggest part of the game to be an important part of the game. I think that's one key point. And then the second thing is that as soon as you have 2, and we keep going back to the fact that it's the smallest possible multiple lot auction, it is 2, and 2 is a massive increase based on 1. But not only is it 2 auctions going on, you've also got the 3 things where you've got to choose to pay for these or not pay for these. And by coinciding those 2 of these 3 payment options, not only are you thinking, okay, what would that person pay for the ninja? What would that person pay for the ninja? I want to either bid the most or not bid at all. And what would that person bid for turn order? Similar decision space. But whilst other folk are doing this, okay, there's something to be said that the amount of time you spend thinking about something is a signal, right? By having something else that you're thinking about and fiddling with at the same time, that actually makes the auction part slightly harder to parse, because now you don't know if that other person's fiddling because they're thinking about the ninja, or if they're fiddling because they're thinking about whether to build or not.
To build more or levy more units. Yes, I mean, in this particular case, the reason why I say it's such a lovely thing is that once you've played with a group, you'll get a flavour for a particular individual's approach to something like turn order or the ninja. So you'll get an idea of how much emphasis they might put on that, and that means they're spending more money on that and not money on building and levying units. And that's or on the other hand, if you know that person likes to have loads of stuff on the board because maybe they're over aggressive or maybe over defensive, then you know, oh well, that influences how much they've got for the auctions. So maybe there's a bit of I can maybe win the ninja or win the turn order more cheaply, and that's beautiful. That's lovely. So it's not just comparing it with lots and lots of different bids they might make on lots. It's comparing it with how much they might spend on things that aren't biddable, that are just clunky stuff in the game. Yeah.
Now, I would like to ask you, Alan, if you have a question that you could pose as the question of the day. Here's a little question before we go on our way. It's okay if you don't.
I don't actually have a. You have.
Okay, my question.
I'm glad you have one.
What's your favorite Japanese thing?
Oh, I see.
We talked a lot about Shogun, and I'm just curious. And my favorite Japanese thing is it wasn't made in Japan. It was done in Hawaii by a Japanese American, but it's by a Japanese American person, and by someone who's kept in touch with their Japanese ancestry. And it's a comic about a Japanese, feudal Japan, and for properly you might know it, Usagi Yojimbo. I've talked about it before. I just love this comic.
Oh, I see.
It's a little bunny rabbit samurai, and all the characters are cats and whatnot. The anthropomorphization is kind of it doesn't mean that this is a kid's book. There's a lot of, I would say it's fine for a maybe 11-year-old to read. I would be comfortable with an 11-year-old reading it, but there is death. There's a lot of killing. There's a lot of betrayal. There's a lot of sometimes exploration of love and occasionally lust. But it's got really well-rounded characters. And I just love how over the years, all of these characters have come, but at the same time, the whole thing is super approachable. And you can buy one of the latest comic books and understand it perfectly, even if you haven't read any of the previous ones.
That sounds good. Sounds like something that my daughters would be very interested in. They are heavily into anime and manga. So
I'll have to ask Vicky if Vicky Dalton wants to borrow my Usagi Yojimbo collection. I would offer that to Vicky.
She might be interested in that. Yeah. My answer would be teriyaki. Yeah, nothing better than a teriyaki beef.
And Timmy says Skies of Arcadia, a Japanese RPG. Was that for the Dreamcast? I can't quite remember, but I remember. I've not played that myself, but you're flying around in these big airships, and it's a lovely story. I've heard so many good things about that. But otherwise, I love anime. But over to you. What are you up to, Kid Shepherdson, if you want to? As we wind down, I had a whole list of to-do things for today. I am feeling my nose getting blocked, which is a little bit concerning, but I'm going to make sure I get out to the bank because, let's be honest, I can always push myself and do that. I need to cancel a payment, which I'm a bit annoyed about, that it wasn't cancelled automatically, and I've been paying someone when I shouldn't be paying them. And so I'll have to see if I can get some of that money back because, it's not going to cripple me, but still, it's you
don't want to be paying money you don't have to. That's for sure. Not nowadays, anyway.
And so that was also to a big business. So anyway, I'll see if I can get at least a partial refund. But the first step is to go to the bank to tell the bank to stop to make sure that no more payments come out. and I might go to the GP because I've got some personal issues. I might, and also I've been told I need to go for a health checkup. And other than that, there's nothing that I feel I have to do today, but a bunch of things that I want to do in the next few days. So I'll see what I manage to do, whether that's a bit of reaching out to people for my 1000th stream, preparing for my leaving party, or indeed maybe even preparing my deck construction game, or getting what I've realized I should put up the priority list is clearing my belongings, because then I've realized that, you know what, it's not just about me. I mean, even if I look at myself as, I mean, obviously this is not true, but even if I said the sum total value of Bez is in the games that Bez makes, which obviously there's other values to me as a person.
Yes, there definitely are.
But,
yes.
But ignoring that, even if I'm like, okay, I want to be as productive as possible, well, I still need to, what I've realized the past few days is I still need to, clean up. And
yes,
because organizing myself is, I believe, going to lead to being more efficient down the line. So yes.
Well, that all sounds good. Yes, that all sounds great. I mean, I'm probably this afternoon going to continue writing bits and pieces, preparing for the Game Found launch of 3 Sanchos, which hasn't been decided yet at all. We've not decided on any dates, but I need to do more preparing the launch page for that.
And that's also another very thinky game. I mean, if you enjoy things where it seems kind of simple, but then there's like this big web of interaction between all the cards and really complex decisions. I played it with you and Charlie, and I was, wow,
it's crunchy. It's crunchy,
yeah.
And also, I want to play a few more. I've got to do more solo play testing, so I'm going to be doing some more playing. I've got the solo difficulty level sorted out now, so I need to go through those and make sure that they're suitably difficult. I'm not a great solo player, so I also rely on other people to test the solo version to make sure it's hard enough.
And Timmy, talking about Skies of Arcadia, says, yes, it came out for the Dreamcast first and then GameCube. It's my favorite game of all time and also my biggest influencer. Yeah. So, I mean, it's lovely to hear that passion for something. And as I wrap up, well, I'll recap and wrap up before we finish up. So we talked about so much. We talked about games we'd recently played, whether that's Mega City Oceania. I also played actually a couple of games of Kitty Cataclysm, which has enough skill that I keep winning really well, and then I feel slightly bad when I thrash other people. But
I love the fact that we've got you playing Kitty Cataclysm on one hand and me playing Twilight Imperium on the other.
I mean,
it's a total contrast in duration of game there. They're still both games.
And then, codenames, Twilight Imperium, Carnegie, and Woodcraft. And we talked about, as we got into the main topic, we talked about doing multiple things at once. It's enjoyable. We enjoy the sensory aspect of, maybe listening to something. When I play games, when I have people over, I like to have music in the background. When I'm drawing, I like to have music and maybe something talking as well. When I'm playing a game, I like to not only be thinking, but I like to be looking at pieces. And obviously, for me, the rules are more important, but if you've got pretty pieces, all the better. And I think that multiple auctions are kind of an extension of that, where now not only do we have multiple sensory things, but we've got multiple things going on in our brain to ponder. And we talked about Shogun, where it promotes trickier decision making, less analysis paralysis, more drama when you reveal, and it's not just the results of one thing, but it's the results of all of these things. Wow, you're doing all of that. And I think that's a really nice way to get a big boost of drama in the game. We talked about a few games where you get only one thing, which does feel functionally different. We talked about there being 3 different axes, whether it's very different things, presumably with the same currency, like Shogun, although I don't think the same currency really matters. I mean, you can equally use like a Keyflower mechanism of different things. Although, no, you couldn't, because you need to have someone picking for the start what currency is each thing. But yeah, or you could have similar things like for sale, whether you've got compensation or not, whether you have the possibility of one person winning nothing or potentially winning a lot, or whether it's exactly one thing per person. These are the three different taxes that I think you need to consider how will it best fit this game. And it is not that utilized, but at the same time, I'm not sure either of us felt comfortable saying it's underused, because there is so much that could be done, but there's also so much that could be done with a lot of other things. And it is a mechanism where it is going to make the game very different, because auctions always do. But at the same time, you mentioned in Shogun, it feels like a light touch. And then we also talked about how fiddling with multiple things at once can play into the whole, because otherwise sometimes you're forced to slow down because of the bluffing, if you know what I mean. If I'm playing in poker and I pass instantly or I bid instantly, that's giving too much away. I always want to spend a little bit of time before I tell you, yes, I'm raising, or no, I'm not, just so you don't know exactly what's going on in my head. And similarly, if I've got multiple things going on in my head, like multiple auctions, then maybe that means that there's less downtime, because whilst I'm thinking of that, well, I'm actually thinking about the thing that I'm really thinking about, if you know what I mean.
Yes, I think that's...
That was our recap and wrap up. And hello, Sate, lovely to see you. And as always, I am stuck by Bez in all of the places. If you want to check out my streams, you know where to find my forthcoming stream bits. And Alan, where do you like to be found online?
I'm on email. I'm alan@spicetechgames.co.uk. I have a blog on spicetechgames.com website. And I'm Alan Paull on Board Game Geek. Otherwise, I'm Benthamfish on Twitter.
And you can see all of those links at the bottom of the screen. And so for now, I want to say, please share, spread the word. I'm going to actually reverse those 2 bits. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here. Thank you, Alan, for joining me.
Good to be here, as ever.
Is there anything else that you want to say?
No, I am very happy. Thank you very much.
Well then.
It always makes me happy.
Bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for so long. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for so long. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go.
Bye, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.
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 Bye. Bye.